Hat, sunglasses, Pepsi, notes, sources, thick skin, check. You already know. Let's go. Golden Blued is a college football YouTube channel for entertainment. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get into our next college football video. I'm very bundled up. It is single digits outside. It is so cold that our heating unit can't even keep up with how cold it is. It is helping. It is warming it up somewhat, but it's not like actual heat. It's just making it cold. Instead of freezing, it's just cold in here. So I'm actually wearing two hoodies. You see one hoodie, you see two hoodies, and I'm still wearing a toboggan. So yeah, it's a bit nippy in here. So if you're wondering why I'm dressed this way, no, this is not a gimmick. It's just that cold in here. So we found out earlier in the year that Texas and Oklahoma have negotiated with the Big 12, and they will be exiting the Big 12 by 2024. So the biggest thing to work out was scheduling, because part of the deal was they had to still play Big 12 teams as out-of-conference games in 2024, because that will be their first full year in the SEC. And it looks like Big 12, Texas, and Oklahoma have worked that out. So I'm going to run by you, let you know what their scheduling format is going to look like. Now, their schedules aren't out yet, so we don't know what their actual schedules are going to look like just yet. But we know what their format's going to look like, so we have something to go by. So this is what the scheduling format for Texas and Oklahoma will look like for 2023 and 2024. First up, we'll talk about Oklahoma, and it's basically the same for both of them, but they have to rotate teams because, you know, there's two of them. They can't do the same exact format. For Oklahoma, of course, they will play Texas in both years, and they will play Texas forevermore because both of those teams are headed to the SEC. But beyond that, they will have home-and-home games with Oklahoma State, Kansas, and Iowa State. This is kind of a nod to the former Big 8. So all four of those teams will get a home game and an away game with Oklahoma. And you can't say that for everybody, because the next scheduling format looks like this. Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, and West Virginia. Those four teams. Two of those teams will play Oklahoma in 2023. And the other two teams will play Oklahoma in 2024. That's a nod to the current Big 12. And then finally, the last scheduling format for Oklahoma is BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF, the four new members of the Big 12. Two of them will play Oklahoma in 2023, and the other two will play Oklahoma in 2024. Now, that is a nod to the new Big 12. Now, let's talk about the scheduling format for Texas. It's basically the same thing. You just have to alternate with Oklahoma. So for Texas, of course, they will play Oklahoma in both of those years and forevermore, because both of those two teams are going to the SEC. They'll get home-and-home games with Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, and West Virginia. So instead of getting home-and-home with former Big 8 members, Texas will get home-and-home with current Big 12 members. For Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, the former Big 8 members, two of those teams will play Texas in 2023, and the other two teams play Texas in 2024. So there's your nod to the former Big 8. And then finally, the four new Big 12 members, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, and BYU. Two of them will play Texas in 2023, and the other two will play Texas in 2024, and there's your nod to the new Big 12. So whatever years Oklahoma gets Cincinnati, Houston at home, Texas would get road games against Cincinnati and Houston. And it's the same thing with UCF and BYU. Whatever year Oklahoma gets home games with UCF and BYU, Texas would get the road games, and then you just flip-flop between those four teams. So this guarantees that half will get home-and-home with Oklahoma, and half will get home-and-home with Texas. Texas and Oklahoma will play everybody at least once, but not everybody is guaranteed a home game with Oklahoma, but also not everybody is guaranteed a home game with Texas. Teams that don't get to have a home game with Oklahoma, they will get home games against Texas, and vice versa. Teams that don't get to have a home game with Texas will get a home game with Oklahoma. So this is about as fair as it gets. I think this was worked out very, very well. It guarantees that everybody will play Oklahoma and Texas. It doesn't guarantee that everybody gets a home game with Oklahoma or Texas. Some will, some won't. But whoever doesn't get a home game with Oklahoma is guaranteed to get a home game with Texas. And whoever doesn't get a home game with Texas is guaranteed to have a home game with Oklahoma. I think it worked out perfectly. Whoever come up with this idea was really well thought out, and I think they did a really, really good job. So we'll find out what the schedules actually look like in the months to come. But at least we have something to go by. At least we have a format. and at least those new four members coming into the Big 12, all four of them know that for sure they will play Oklahoma and Texas. They just don't know who is going to get a home game with Texas and who's going to get a home game with Oklahoma. But either way, that's a win-win. That's about as good as it gets. You can't guarantee a home game for everybody to play Oklahoma, and you also can't guarantee a home game for everybody to play Texas. That's impossible. Now, if this was stretched out to 4 years, then yeah, you could do that. But this is just 2 years because Texas and Oklahoma are headed to the SEC in 2024. So these won't be conference games in 2024. All these games, whoever they're playing in 2024, will be out of conference games. But this was part of the negotiations. I think this was the right choice for Texas and Oklahoma, obviously. The sooner they get into the SEC, the better. But I think this is also the best move for the Big 12. They can move forward with the new Big 12 brand. And I do think the Big 12 will expand in the future. It's looking like they're going to head towards the Pac-12 first. Probably the four corners, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. Especially with Colorado picking up Deion Sanders, because whenever they announced that they were interested in the four corners, Colorado was the one brand that I was like, I don't know about that. Colorado's football brand was in the basement at the time, but hiring Deion Sanders, that's elevated their football brand. I would have swapped Colorado for Washington State. Washington State has one of the biggest fan bases in the Pac-12. In fact, a top 25 fan base in the entire nation. So I would have absolutely swapped Colorado for Washington State. But since Colorado went out and made some big moves and hired Deion Sanders, then yes, Colorado is firmly on the platter of the Big 12 as far as adding members from the Pac-12. And yes, I do think that the Pac-12 is in danger. I don't think that there's any scenario where the Pac-12 survives. I do think they'll be picked apart by the Big 12 and the Big 10. I think the Big 10 is kind of holding off on Oregon and Washington. But Oregon and Washington, they do not want to go to the Big 12. So the Big 10 knows that they're not in any danger of losing Oregon or Washington to the Big 12. They just don't think that the timing is right now. And I do think that Oregon and Washington might be looking at a partial revenue share to get into the Big 10, because from what I'm hearing, they don't make enough money to make it equal revenue share as far as bumping up the value of that TV deal. And I think they're going to be okay with that, because that would still be a crap ton more money than what they're making in the Pac-12. And on top of that, the most important thing, it ensures their future. It ensures that they will be in a power conference forevermore, that they will still exist, that they won't miss the playoffs as far as having a chance to actually get into the playoffs. Because once you're in the Big 10 and the SEC, you are guaranteed that you actually have a chance to make the playoffs. So that's the first and foremost thing. And then on top of that, the money, of course. You want to make a lot of money. And the Big 10 would be the best fit for Oregon and Washington. Both of those two teams have AAU status. I think they would fit in perfectly, especially since the Big 10 has already made it a coast-to-coast conference by adding USC and UCLA. So I do think that the Pac-12 is in trouble, and I do think that the Big 12 is in a good position and that they will pick up the four corners. I'm hoping as a West Virginia fan that after they do that, they turn their eyes eastward and look towards the ACC, because from what I'm hearing, those 8 teams needed to vote to dissolve the grant of rights. They do exist. That will happen, and Big 12 needs to add teams on the east side of the conference to help with those east teams, because now they don't just have West Virginia on the east side. They have West Virginia, Cincinnati, and UCF. So they need to help those 3 teams as far as traveling over to the Southwest, because those are some long road trips. And for us West Virginia fans, we want to actually be able to go to road games. Come on, give us some help. Give us some East teams. That way we can go to more road games. I'm happy that we added Cincinnati. I can go to a road game for Cincinnati every once in a while. And UCF down there in Orlando, we just went to Disney last year. So if that would have been around the time of a road game for West Virginia to UCF, I could have went to a UCF game. It's not that far away. Southwest, that's pretty far away. It's not that doable for me. So add more teams to the east side so that the West Virginia fan base and the Cincinnati fan base and the UCF fan base can travel to more road games. So y'all let me know in the comments section, what do you think about the scheduling format for Texas and Oklahoma, and for the rest of the new Big 12 for that matter, as far as the exit strategy of Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC in 2024. Do you like it or do you hate it? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.